Okay, the two faces you see are my own, Carlo Massarini, and Brian Hamill, who is a well-distinguished photographer from New York. Brian, can we see you?
Yeah, I can see. I see the photograph.
Yeah. Sarah can. Oh, okay, here you are. First of all, Sarah, which is a person that will record during this connection, is our director who is going to post the various photographs of Brian. Good afternoon. Good afternoon from Rome, Brian. I suppose you're in Los Angeles, so it's early morning, isn't it?
Well, not too early. It's at 10 o'clock in the morning in New York.
It is early. Depends on what lifestyle you have.
Yeah. Well, I'm an early riser. I get up at 6.
Well,
yeah.
I might meet you on. I might meet you on the way to my bedroom sometimes. Then.
Well, listen.
All right, Brian. Okay.
From your book, you did a lot of work in clubs. You did an extensive.
No, I just like to stay at home. You know.
No, but the work you did, the photographs you did, my God, you were all over the joint.
Yeah, but I like to stay up late. I like to stay up late. Okay, so this is the reason why we're meeting here today. This is the book by Brian Hamill. It's called Dream Lovers, John and Yoko in New York. We're going to talk about not only John Lennon and Yoko and New York and your pictures, but we're going to talk about all of the pictures of Brian, who is a photographer who is not a rock photographer in the strict sense of the word. Brian is a photojournalist and a photographer at large, and he has really touched way beyond rock and roll. He's gotten into political shootings, lifestyle shootings, and especially, I read that you were, we say in Italian, fotografo di scena. You were a photographer on the movie scene.
Yes.
For many, many movies. How many movies?
77 movies.
Oh, so that's a lifetime. The poster that you just saw, Sarah, let's show it again. This is one of the most famous photographs, or at least movie posters of all time, and it's of course it's of the movie Manhattan, starring Woody Allen, and yes, and okay, let's start from here. Let's start from what you feel. How did you get into the movies, and especially how did you hide on the movie scenes? Because the important thing in a situation like that, I suppose, is just to be like a fly on the wall, not to be noticed by anyone. And so, how did you do that? What was your technique?
Well, if you're part of the crew, which I was part of the crew, the camera crew. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have to go in and do a paparazzi kind of move. I was expected to do the work. Mm-hmm. And there's there's two kinds of work on movies. You shoot a scene still, which captures the dramatic or the comedic moment in each scene. So you try to get that point. Mm-hmm. And then there's like
this one.
That was a point, and he's kissing her. This is from Annie Hall.
Yep.
And it was on the dock in Lower Manhattan. So
were they in love at that moment, Diane and Woody?
No, they had been lovers years before.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
They were very good friends. I mean, they speak to each other several times a week, so they're very friendly. Mm-hmm.
So you have to be very attentive on the moment that you have to shoot.
You have to get your work done, because when the work goes back to the studio, you can't say, "Well, the actors were tough on me." You got to get the work, but you got to be unobtrusive.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be like the balloon that an actor wants to shoot and break the balloon. You can't be that. You have to be subtle. But you have to get the work done. You have to get the pictures done. And part of that for me, that helped me with that, and not to be intimidated by actors or directors, but to be a collaborator with them, was growing up as a Brooklyn street guy. A tough Irish neighborhood, and you had to fight your way to get respect. literally fight your way to get respect. So when I got on movie sets, the first movie I did was in Rome, by the way. And I saw a lot of people standing around looking like this. And I'm like, oh, damn, wonder why all these people look so scared. It was the very first movie because I had done some work for the producer in New York who was from New York, but he was producing his first movie in Rome. And I did the pictures he wanted in New York. And I did them for free because my older brother, who was a writer, was friendly with him when he was a PR guy, and then he became a producer. Anyway, that movie never got released. It was called The Martha's Tale. And it was
so your first shooting never got released.
Never got released. But we did.
That's not a good start, Brian. That's not a good start.
Yeah, but listen, I learned my craft on that movie. I learned how to say, okay, this is what I got to do. Sure. And the crew, the Italian crew, they were exceedingly nice and respectful, and they gave me advice. So yes, it was like OJT, on the job training. I learned how to do the craft.
We have seen a couple of photographs. Can we run through them again, Sara? Because these are from Raging Bull, aren't they? Toro scatenato in Italian.
Yeah.
This is
a photograph taken in my old neighborhood in Brooklyn at an armory. And that scene was after De Niro and Joe Pesci, Jake and Joey LaMotta, the characters' names, were walking out of the dressing room after Jake threw a fight. He threw a fight for Wise Guys.
Okay.
And, it's like a cliche, but that actually happened.
Sara, keep running on the pictures.
Excuse me? Oh, yeah. And that's him after that same fight. So the one that you preceded this follows this in sequence in the movie. And that's like he's sitting at the table and he's kind of mad at himself for,
Let me ask you one thing. Is the guy a tough guy? Because you have to be kind of tough to interpret. Well, you don't have to be Muhammad Ali, but you have to be pretty tough to interpret a movie on a boxer, don't you?
Yes, and listen, I used to box, so I know.
Oh,
in fact, we shot a lot in the gym where I trained when I was fighting as a kid, when I was 14, 15, and 16, before I went to college. But De Niro actually did the training in that same gym. The Gramercy, very famous Gramercy gym, owned by a very famous guy who was my teacher, Cus D'Amato, Italian-American guy, who went on to manage Floyd Patterson, Jose Torres, and Mike Tyson. In fact, he was the one who introduced me to Mike Tyson when Mike was 15. But
you never boxed with Mike Tyson, did you? Brian, you never boxed with Mike Tyson, did you?
No.
No, va bene. But I understand. I'm sympathetic with that. This is Coppola and his daughter when she was still very young.
Yeah, this is before she was directing. And this is one of the New York stories. There was 3 New York short stories. One Woody did, one Coppola did, and one Scorsese did. And they were called New York stories. They were all, the 3 of them were shorts. And she came by to visit her dad. And I grabbed that moment when she hugged him.
Who is this?
Go back a second, Carlo. I just want to finish my thought about Robert De Niro because you asked me about him. He was a very dedicated guy, and he trained very hard to become. And for an actor, he was one of the better fighters. He really knew what he was doing. That's why he was so convincing. That's why he won an Academy Award. He was Jake LaMotta.
Did you attend? Who is this?
That's Robert Downey.
Oh, Robert Downey Jr. Sure.
Yes.
Sure. Of course. In the old days, he was really young here.
Oh yeah.
Not Iron Man yet.
Yes, he was. That was in 1987. And it was after a movie. I asked him if I could get him in the studio, my studio, to shoot after a movie that we did together called The Pickup Artist. And he said, sure. So he's a funny guy, and he makes faces, and these are some of the faces he makes.
Okay, Sarah, keep going. We're running a little late. We have to be okay. Muhammad, you got this back shot for Muhammad?
Yeah, this was taken in Puerto Rico in 1965. And he was doing an exhibition as a favor to his friend, who was the light heavyweight champ, Jose Torres, who was fighting. He was the main event, but Muhammad did an exhibition with Jimmy Ellis, his sparring partner. So I like that picture because it's got a dramatic shot of him with his robe and the lights behind him in a stadium called Hiram Bithorn Stadium in Puerto Rico, San Juan.
Keep going, Sarah.
Meryl Streep.
Very young Meryl Streep, am I correct?
Yeah, this was taken on the set of Manhattan, where she played the character Woody played's ex-wife. And this is while they were going to have a discussion about visitation rights for their kid.
Okay.
This is also in Manhattan. It's where Woody and Diane Keaton visit the planetarium.
Okay.
And they're looking at
Sarah, keep going.
And they're looking at a mock-up of.
Okay. I'm sorry. Okay, Sarah, stop. Come back.
Okay.
Allora, okay. So this to give you an idea, but you will see very different photographs. Now let's go into this book, which is the main reason we're here, and it's 1972. You get called to do this assignment with John Lennon. But let's start from the title of the book, Dream Lovers. Why? People who are so much in love that they're a dream, and people who love to dream about maybe social or political futures. Which is your version of it?
Yeah, I came up with the title, and the publisher, he liked the title, so he went with it. But it's Yoko uses the word dream a lot. She, even in conversations I heard her use the word dream a lot. And in fact, she had an exhibition at the Metropolitan Museum not long ago during the pandemic, and it was called Dream. And also, as far as in the United States, Romeo and Juliet is a fictional couple. But John and Yoko are like the Romeo and Juliet. They're as famous as that, as far as I'm concerned. When you say John and Yoko, you know exactly who it is. You don't have to say their last names. You don't have to say John Lennon and Yoko Ono. So to me, they're like the Romeo and Juliet, but in real life, not fictional. And sadly, also a sad end. Not the same end as Romeo and Juliet, but it ended with John getting murdered by some swine.
Of course.
This is right outside their apartment. We just left their apartment. I asked them if they wanted to go for a walk, and they said, yeah, sure. They gave me no time constraints on anything. I never said, do I have a certain amount of time? I didn't bring that up. I never bring that up with actors. Do I have a certain time? Because then I'll give you a certain time. You just there you go. You just get into it as if you belong there.
Yeah.
And
from the stories that I heard from you is that they were sort of a very nice, down to earth couple.
Totally. They never. When people approached them, they didn't get mobbed like Beatlemania. It wasn't like that. New Yorkers were a little more sophisticated than, but people stopped them on the street and wanted to ask them questions. And they never talked down to whoever they were speaking to. They never made themselves feel more important than the people they were speaking to. And I made a mental note of that. And it made me show in my brain that they had a humanity to them, because they were very nice to everybody that spoke to them. They answered all the questions. They didn't try to run away from them or any of that. There was, and a lot of the questions, hey, how do you like New York? And he says, I love New York. Some people thought he came to New York to hide, but I think he came to New York to blend in with New Yorkers.
Yeah, to lead a normal life.
Yes.
You have taken pictures. I don't know if they're going to be mixed or not, but you have taken pictures in 3 occasions. One is the live shot that we saw before, which is the concert in Madison Square Garden, I believe, in 1972. And this is one. And then you have a John Lennon with short hair and a John Lennon with long hair, which is a very different face. It gives him a very different face.
The second time I photographed him was at the Bank Street apartment. Now, 2.5 years later, here by himself in the Dakota.
Okay.
And this was taken in the kitchen, and I was shooting away, and he was talking back to me. We were talking while I was shooting, and he just said to me, Brian, hold on a second. I got an idea or two for lyrics. And on that table, he had a piece of paper, and there were already lyrics written on a piece of paper. And he sat down, and this is him thinking, and then he actually wrote some lyrics down. And after he did that, in the middle of that, he said to me, I'm fucking hungry. Are you hungry? And I said, yeah, I had to listen, fucking, the Liverpoolian accent. And I said, yeah, I'm hungry, because it was like after 3 in the afternoon. I hadn't eaten lunch because, I was a little nervous, even though it was the third time I had photographed him. But he was so cool. He made me relax as soon as I walked in the door. But he said, do you like, how about toasty? Would you like a toasty? And I said, a toasty? What's a toasty? He said, oh, well, you guys call it like a grilled crisp cheese or something. I said, oh, grilled cheese. Oh, yeah, I love that. And in the other room, there was an Asian woman ironing. And I thought he was going to ask her to hook up the eats. I thought, hey, he'll hook up the lunch. And that didn't happen. He went over to the cupboard and pulled out a big black frying pan. He opened the refrigerator. He pulled out wrapped cheese. There was a butter dish already on the counter. Put the frying pan down, and he made the 2 grilled cheese sandwiches quickly and skillfully. They were
skillfully. That's important.
They were delicious.
That's important.
He had done it before, and he added chips to it too.
Cynthia, Brian, did he ever get into talking? I mean, besides the normal chat, like, how are you today? Are you hungry or not? Did he ever get into talking about, oh, this is a real nice one. Where's this taken?
That's taken on the roof of the Dakota.
Oh, wow.
That is central. That's the east side skyline. That's the skyline of Fifth Avenue. But in between, where you see the lake there, the frozen lake, because it was February, and that's Central Park, right near Strawberry Fields.
That's beautiful. This is a beautiful one.
Before it was Strawberry Fields.
I was just mentioning, if did he ever talk about, how can I say, music, artistic, the Beatles, what he was doing himself, what he was planning to doing? Did he ever get into the musical side of his life?
The only musical thing that came up was when I asked him if I could take some pictures in front of his jukebox. And here we go. And he said, would you like to hear anything? And I said, and I didn't want to be corny and say, can you put Imagine on or another Beatles song? So I just said, do you have any Marvin Gaye? He said, oh, of course I have Marvin Gaye. I love Marvin Gaye. So he turned around, he hit the buttons a few times, and What's Going On by Marvin Gaye came on. And we listened to the whole song, and I was watching him from the side because he was facing the other way that we're seeing now. You could see he was singing along with the lyrics. And I thought, wow, this guy knows all the lyrics. I don't even know all the lyrics, and I love Marvin Gaye. But this guy seems like he knows all the lyrics. And then when the song ended, I was so excited that he played Marvin Gaye for me. I made a kind of a faux pas. And I went over to him and I said, "This is the most inventive album of the 70s so far." I caught myself. I said, "Oh, shit,
You know, Brian, usually when you say something like that, you always say, except for the present people.
Yeah, I know. I didn't do that, though. I let it hang. A couple of seconds later, he said, "I agree with you. It's a great..." Can I curse? Am I allowed to curse on this?
Yeah, go ahead.
"It's a great fucking album." I felt so relieved that he said that. I went, "Oh, he saved me." You know, it showed how gracious he was. To talk about another artist. If you did
beautiful. This is
that
beautiful.
with an actor, they'd say, "Wait a second, what about me?" But he just let it slide, and he was cool about it.
Allora, since you bring on Marvin Gaye, that was a very political album. That was the first album that Marvin Gaye,
Right.
when he was at Tamla, that was his turning point with Tamla. No, that was the album that he decided to do everything by himself. You know, lyrics, music, production, and everything, and had to fight with Berry Gordy to get it out. They didn't want it. They didn't want that album out.
Berry Gordy didn't like the album either.
And of course, it's a beautiful album. Number one on Rolling Stone's most important 500 albums, if that makes any relevance. And but that brings a subject which is very familiar with Lennon. Now, the reason he might like this album is not only the fact that it's beautiful from a musical point of view, but also because it, you know, addresses certain topics of which I suppose John Lennon was familiar and probably fond of. At the same time, did you get into that kind of talk about his interests in a different world than the one that you were living in at the time?
Yeah, I mean, we chatted briefly, not extensively, but about. I said, "Gee, I wish I had photographed some of those pieces. You know, they look like fun." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I hope the message got across because you know, he was really a man who wanted peace." I got that from him, and I got it prior to that when I was all the bed-ins for peace and everything. But I didn't get to photograph any of those because some of them were up in Canada. They were in different states. So he was genuine about his whole thing about peace, and he had a very relaxed nature when he was with me. He didn't seem uptight. The only thing. When I was leaving from those roof pictures, when we were leaving, when I first got there, I put on a cap that had an open snap. And he looked at me because he had done many, so I had seen many photographs of him with the cap with the open snap. So I kind of copped his style. That's what we say in Brooklyn. He copped my style. So I copped his. I said, "John, sorry for copping your style." He said he didn't even say anything. He just smiled and chuckled a little bit. But after I asked him one more question on the roof, I said, "By the way, John, was Dylan a big influence on you?" He said, "Well, you know, I love Dylan's songs. I love his lyrics and a whole bunch of his songs. But the guy who influenced me the most," and he pointed to Elvis, the pin on his thing. He put his finger right on that pin, which you're showing that photograph. He said, "This is the guy that made me want to become a rock and roller."
Yeah. Well, you have to consider the fact that, you know, Elvis was around when, I mean, the first big heyday of Elvis Presley was when John Lennon was a kid. And so that was probably what, you know, his main influence. He played skiffle with his band, which most of the bands in England played at the late 50s. But at the same time, you know, going into rock and roll, you know, who else could be your model? You know, when they started playing rock and roll, remember that Dylan wasn't around yet. I mean, Dylan's first album is 1961, 62. They probably got to America, to England a little later. And the Beatles were already on the rock and roll track at that point.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Dylan comes in, I think, Dylan, okay, you know about the story that Dylan was the first one to give a marijuana joint to the Beatles. Did you know about that? Yeah. So that was 1965. So that's the meeting point between John Lennon and Dylan. And of course, Dylan, from that point onwards, was a very interesting. It was a give and take because he understood how songs could be played in a less folky and more rock and rollish kind of way. And it was an influence on them because they understood that you could write not only about, she loves you and songs of love, very simple songs of love, but you could go also into addressing other kind of subjects. So it was a mutual influence, a very interesting mutual.
Yeah, good point, Carlo. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
They both learned from each other. Dylan learned to make his folky kind of things rock and roll, and his poetic lyrics in a rock and roll form. Yeah, and he got that from the Beatles, but also from the Byrds. When he heard that Mr. Tambourine Man by the Byrds, he went, "Wow, this is a different
Tambourine Man." Yeah. What about Yoko? What about the relationship between them?
Well, I can only speak for my relationship with her. I don't know about their relationship, but I am not one of these people who's going to go down the road to perdition and badmouth Yoko, because she was so nice to me. She was exceedingly nice, and she showed humanity. When we were on the street, you can be nice when you photograph. Somebody can be nice to you when you take pictures of them. But to show how they act with other people who had nothing to do with the photographic process, like when they were on the street and talked to people, they showed their humanity. They showed their depth. She was just as nice as he was. Of course, most people wanted to talk to him, but some people asked her particular questions, and she was nice. Very nice, but humanity nice.
So they were a very relaxed kind of couple.
Totally. They held hands. They were really like a romantic couple.
They were dream lovers. Exactly.
Yeah.
Dream lovers.
Yeah.
Okay. Sarah, we got something else to see from the Lennon book? If not, we can move on, and we have a lot of other pictures to show. So what's the next one? Okay, so we get into the Rolling Stones now. Because I and Brian shot Mick Jagger in the same year, but look how different it is. These pictures are from my book. Let me show you my book. Here it is, which is this big one, Dear Mr. Fantasy. Yeah. Oh, you have one too. Fantastic. Yeah. We're in stereo, Brian.
2 hours looking at it yesterday.
Yes, our book is in stereo. Allora, this is the 10th anniversary revamp of Mr. Fantasy with many more pages. It's for all the people who might be listening from outside of Italy who don't know me and don't know what Mr. Fantasy is, which was of course the Traffic song, but at the same time the show that I did on television between 1981 and 84 on video clips, the first show international before MTV. Mr. Fantasy is my period in the rock world, different from what your career was, Brian. I never basically shot anything meaningful outside of rock. Yes, I went to Africa. I shot a little bit of my passions, Africa, Egypt, and everything. But you're, from a photojournalist point of view, your work is much more interesting. But I did shoot a lot of music because I picked up a camera in 1969, my father's camera. I went to the concert of Rolling Stones in Hyde Park. I went to the back. I saw 500,000 people there. I said, if I go in the back, I'll never get a shot. So I went to the backstage and I said, can I go in? And they said, they looked at me and said, why do you want to go in? I said, because I'm a photographer from Italy. You see the camera? I was 16. I was really very, very young. And they said, okay. So I got in and I took a few pictures of Mick. It was a special day. It was the coming back of the Rolling Stones live after a few years. Brian Jones had died a few days before. They liberated 10,000 butterflies, most of which died.
I saw film clips of that whole concert.
It was a very special occasion. Did they play well? Probably not too much. I remember a fantastic version of Midnight Rambler, but they were getting together. Mick Taylor had just come in.
And that was bold of you to get in there. I like that.
Yeah, well, you have to be, you have to have some attitude when you do this job. As well. I mean, we'll see your
and
on the
also
IRA and everything. You have to be,
anticipation. You have to
yeah.
have a good sense of anticipation to see what the next moment is going to be, to make sure you get it.
Oh, that's that's a technique. But I don't really want to go into it. But the same thing that you said before about Woody Allen, catching the moment, the same thing is perfectly on the spot for rock and roll. You said it very well. You have to anticipate. You have to understand or imagine or just think what the guy is going to be doing a few seconds later on, or just a split second later on. Personally, I like to photograph, for instance, not when they're singing, because they usually have the big mouth, and sometimes it's good, but a lot of the times a good shot is when between songs, when they have different expressions.
Right.
So it's almost like being in a studio, although you're not in a studio because you have live lights. Right. And sometimes sometimes you're good at it, and sometimes you're not. This is the Rolling Stones in '82. Because and this is hold this, Sarah, for a minute. I saw the Rolling Stones in '69 and in '82. In '69, I was not a photographer yet. I was just a kid, but I was under the stage. In 1982, I was a photographer, a well-known personality on television, and I was standing 100 yards away. So that shows something. The world of music had transformed itself. It was not artisanry anymore. It was industry, and so it was big time. But the reason why I chose to show you this picture, Brian, is not really only because of Mick Jagger, who you can see has a shirt on his torso, which is with number 20. That's the actually jersey of Paolo Rossi, who was number 9 in the football. In the Mondiali, in the World Tournament of that year, 1982. Wow. When Mick Jagger was on stage, he said, you're going to win 3-1 tonight. And everybody said, yeah. And he had the shirt of Paolo Rossi, and Italy won 3-1. Wow. Well, the guy has connections, either upside or downside, but the guy does have connections. And so the double page is autographed by Paolo Rossi, who was a friend of mine. Paolo died a week ago. I don't know if the echo went all the way to the States or not, but the whole world grieved because he was one of the very first worldwide sports champions. That Mondial, wherever you went, in the 80s, they say Italian. Paolo Rossi, because he was so well known. He was so loved. He was a really very nice guy. Let me see his signature again, Sarah. Let's show the double page again, because it's not signed Paolo Rossi. It's signed Pablito, which was his name after he was the hombre del partido, was the man of the match. He was the man of the match for 3 games in a row, from semifinals to the finals. So that's the closing. I open with the Rolling Stones, my book, and I close it with the Rolling Stones. And ciao, Paolo, wherever you are.
Nice. Yeah.
Okay, Sarah, let's go on. Let's go back to okay. So let's change completely. We have to talk a little bit about your involvement with these pictures, Brian, because I understand that you're Irish, so you are, of course, in your own turf in a way. But IRA is a very serious moment in the history of Northern Ireland. It's where the independents fight against the British Army. So tell me about these pictures.
Well, I grew up. Both of my parents were from Belfast. They were born in Belfast. Mm-hmm. So I grew up with all the stories about the sectarian problems between the Protestants and the Catholics. And my family was Catholic, and my parents were Catholic. So I heard all the stories about, and also about the occupation of the British soldiers there. Because Northern Ireland is still considered, by many people, England. I consider it Irish. But in any case, it was in my heart to go there. And I got an assignment from the New York Times Magazine right after Bloody Sunday, a week after Bloody Sunday, when the British soldiers in Derry killed 13 innocent people. People they were doing nothing except it was a demonstration, and kind of like the way Kent State was in the States. You know, trigger happy soldiers sometimes make the wrong moves. And it was a big outrage. So I went there, and the Times wanted me to go there. And I was happy to. And I got hooked up because of family connections. So I got to hang out when I got to Derry with the IRA. And so a lot of the pictures from Derry, when you see the guys with the rifles, Sarah, maybe you can go to some of the images with the rifles. Yeah, these are all through my connections. Not many photographers can get stuff like this unless you're connected with them. Mm-hmm. And I became very good friends with Martin McGuinness. May he rest in peace, because he's dead now. But he went on to, he was the head, that's Martin McGuinness, camera right, far camera right, the taller one. That was him with other IRA guys. And Martin went on after the peace finally settled in, and he ended up being a member of Parliament, but still kept his focus on freedoms for Northern Ireland. So, and these are kids throwing rocks at the Saracen, British Saracen. The Saracen is like a tank, a military tank. Mm-hmm. And it was a daily occurrence. Every day they would, and the tanks would shoot rubber bullets. I got hit with one, actually, which I brought back to the States. It hit me in the back and knocked the wind out of me. And it hurt because it had a ceramic tip. And so it hurt.
I read just a couple of days ago, I saw a picture of these rubber bullets, which everybody thinks they're like similar to bullets, but they're made of rubber. But it's not so. They're like sort of little cylinders of ceramic, aren't they?
Yes. No. And if they hit you in the face, they can put your eye out. They hurt.
Oh, yeah. Oh, of course.
Yeah. Now, this is a kid. He was only 16 when he sat next to me in the car. I didn't know his name or anything, but that's a bomb.
What is he doing here?
And I said to myself years later, gee, I'm lucky that because gelignite can explode when the people holding it don't want it to explode. Mm-hmm. So I was lucky that nothing happened with this kid, but they were on their way to plant a bomb. So I just grabbed a picture of him holding the bomb.
Was this the first time you were on a scenery of war?
Yes.
What were your feelings? Were you afraid?
Well, back then you always have a certain amount of fear, or else it's like in boxing. If you don't fear, if you don't have a certain amount of fear, you'll get knocked out. You got to have a certain amount of respect for the other guy's power. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you have built-in fear, but you also have to overcome the fear. It's like Cus D'Amato used to say, fear is like fire. It can cook for you, or it can burn your house down. Don't mm-hmm. let it burn your house down. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I had fear, but I wanted to get a good job of work done.
Yeah, I know. I understand very well. When you're concentrating on your job, you forget a little bit about what's around. What were the feelings of the people, though?
The people, well, most of the people that I encountered and had lengthy conversations with were very sympathetic to the IRA and to freedom. I didn't really spend that much time talking to the other side, because mm-hmm. I just didn't interact with them. I was only there for a certain amount of time, mm-hmm. and I wanted to get dramatic pictures, so I stayed with the IRA. Mm-hmm. And but it's a give or take. Each side has their points, and then they finally made a peace accord in late '90s, '99, I believe it was.
Mhm.
And but there's always little incidents that pop up. It's still never going to ever die down. It's kind of like the Israelis and the Arabs. That'll never be completely healed.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing in Northern Ireland, because it's got British rule, and the Irish people who live there, the Catholics, who are only 1/3 of the population, it's 2/3 Protestant. They want to be a free Ireland. So that's going to be ongoing, but they're not shooting each other anymore.
Fortunately enough. Okay, Sara. Allora, let's grow out of this very special. And it was the first time you were on a scenery of war. Was it also the last one, or did it happen again?
What in Ireland, or
No, for you. No, in general.
in general?
Let's say more than in war, Brian. Let's say in a very dangerous or difficult situation.
Oh, I think that was the most dangerous situation I was in, because I was hanging around with them, and we actually got shot at with live rounds. Some of those pictures are on my website. You see us running, and we were getting shot at by British soldiers, because Martin McGuinness was with us in the escape down an alley.
Okay, so it was a lifetime experience.
Oh yeah, it was a lifetime experience. But listen, there are guys who do that for a living. There's a great photographer, British photographer, Donald McCullum, and I met him when I was in Derry. Very nice man. He did some wonderful war photographs.
And it's very important for. I know it's a very dangerous thing, but it's very important for the rest of the world to see exactly what's going on in these war scenarios. They're of course they're very, very dangerous, but thanks to the people who have courage enough to endure the situations, we know a little bit of what's going on. Otherwise, we wouldn't know a lot of dramatic sceneries around the world. Yeah. Okay, so let's walk out of this. Let me turn on the lights for a moment. The sun has gone down here in Rome, so I have to turn on a little bit of lighting. Manhattan Mail only. Oh, okay. So we're back to New York, aren't we?
Yeah, but this was in the old days. This was 1964 right here. It's taken from the ferry boat that I was on, the Staten Island ferry. And that was actually before they even built the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers.
Oh.
So it was in October of 1964. I was still in college. And my mother and my younger brother, John, may they both rest in peace, we went on a ferry ride. And I took some images of the skyline and the...
I have to tell you that the picture that we just saw of mine at night with the Twin Towers was taken from a ferry as well. Here it is. This is I have a chapter in the book called New York City Serenade. This is taken from the village.
Yep.
And I was in New York in 1979, which was a great year for music in New York. Yeah. And so these are the two pictures. But let me see another picture, Sara. Let me see another picture of mine or of Brian, whatever comes first. Because we're going to talk a little bit about New York. Here's okay. So we have a chapter. I have a chapter in the book. So and I asked Sara to take out all the natives, the guy that lived in New York. And this was David Johansen. This is Garland Jeffries. Did you ever meet these guys? Garland Jeffries, David Byrne. Did you?
No, but I went to CBGB's, but I never met some of those guys there. I just went to listen,
Okay, Sara, put on a picture. Let me just get the dogs out of the room because they're starting to mess around. Here you go. Thanks, fantastic. So tell me something about New York, Brian. I mean, you're a New Yorker. This is the disco era. This is Earth, Wind and Fire, the Bee Gees. These are all the concerts that I lived in New York in
I saw
1975.
Earth, Wind and Fire with my ex-wife. We love them. But anyway,
let's start, Brian. Let's start it all over again. I mean, you're Irish descent, but you were born or just lived in.
I was born in Brooklyn.
Okay, fine. Tell me about your New York.
My neighborhood growing up in Brooklyn was all Irish, with some Italians. There was very few Italian families, but it was mostly Irish, and it was a real working class Irish neighborhood. My mother, may she rest in peace, worked hard to, we had 7 kids in the family, 7 kids in little tiny rooms. In fact, a couple of years ago, we had a family reunion with the remaining members of the family who were alive at the time. And we took our grandkids up to see the apartment where we were raised. And the grandkids were like, I can't believe how small these rooms are. 7 kids in this room?
Couldn't believe it.
That was a trip. It was just to see their reaction, But it was all working class, and that's why I like John Lennon, because he reminded me of a guy from my neighborhood. He was like a working class guy, a working class hero.
Listen, tell me, what have you taken from that experience, from growing up in a neighborhood, a tough neighborhood, working class neighborhood? What part of that is still in you?
Well, let me tell you, my mother used to say, don't talk down to people unless you're willing to pick them up.
That's nice.
If you see bums on the street, if you have some loose change, give it to them. They're in bad shape. Yeah. And don't stick your nose up or keep walking, So I learned that money isn't everything, that you can still have spirituality. You can still have art. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't, and it costs money. So if you get into some kind of, photography costs money initially to get all the equipment. And we're all victims of our equipment because you know how many times they break down and everything. But coming from a poor Irish Catholic family showed me that you can get there from here. You can go places. But I had good influences. My mother, the first gift I ever got that meant something to me was a library card. So I had access to books, and the library was right near where we lived. So that was a big thing, to get books. And I came from a family that eventually had 4 writing brothers. Four of them were writers, professionally. My older brother, who did the, may he rest in peace, he did the introduction to the book. His name is Pete Hamill. And he lived in Rome for several years. So he used to do a lot of pieces for the Saturday Evening Post. He did Marcello Mastroianni, Sophia Loren, Claudia Cardinelli. He did profiles of all those people when he was living in Rome. But more seriously, he wrote like 15 novels. And he was a famous newspaper columnist for the two newspapers, the Daily News and the New York Post.
So a very interesting and creative family. Tell me something about this picture that we just saw, the poster from Manhattan and Diane Keaton and Woody sitting on that bench.
At 3:45 in the morning.
3:45?
Yeah, 3:45 in the morning.
But there's a lot of light. Where is that from?
Well, it's the existing light off in the horizon.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of fog.
That light earlier.
There's a little bit of fog in it.
Yeah.
No? Yeah, because the fog is what gives it the magic. Because otherwise, it would be.
I agree. I love pictures in the fog.
Yeah, they're wonderful.
One of my favorite pictures that I've taken were in Venice, Italy, in the fog.
Yeah, of course, of course. There was a much more fog in the north of Italy than you remember. Now there's not that much.
Now listen, the guy you just passed, his name is Gordon Willis. And I have to give props to Gordon Willis because that was his idea for that shot of Manhattan.
Uh-huh.
That was, and he was the one who kind of designed the shot for it's in the movie too.
Yeah, of course.
And
yeah.
I just said, wow, this is a beautiful tableau. It says New York, but it's he and Woody both discussed the shot at length. So I have to give both of them props and respect for designing the shot. I captured it, and I was lucky enough because some people say, "Oh, you can't see their faces." Listen, I love pictures from behind, like that picture. That picture of a big on the ramp. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
The one with 20 on his back. That's wonderful. Because that.
It's a wonderful picture, and these are other pictures of. Is it the same movie in New York? Is
Annie Hall? Annie Hall.
Oh.
Annie Hall.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first movie that he and Diane, that Gordon Willis and Woody did together. Was Annie Hall?
I see these pictures in Woody's house. Hold on, Sarah. Hold on.
Get home.
Is this home or is this?
That's home.
Okay.
Before flat screen TVs, obviously, it was in the
of course
in the mid-60s.
Okay, so I asked you how John Lennon and Yoko Ono were. Tell me how Woody Allen was. I mean, is he a funny guy in real life?
He's well, on the set, he's very quiet and reserved. So the first movie I did with him was Annie Hall. I did about 27 movies after that with him. But we got to be friends because he's from Brooklyn and he's shy. He just had to be opened up a little. And we'd chat every day. He'd come over to me and talk, and we became good friends. And we're still good friends.
Did you have that strange feeling that sometimes you have with very famous people that you have seen maybe live or on the screen? Do you feel when you talk with them that in some way you're in a movie or not?
With certain actors, yeah, you feel like, oh, they're bigger than life, kind of. So, but not with Woody. I always felt at home with him. I always felt, and like I said, he doesn't talk much, but when he tells a joke, they're funny.
Just a joke? I mean, he's not funny. I don't know him personally, so I can't say. But I have a feeling that people like that are always, very snappy with comments or with lines or this or that. No, he's very quiet. Oh,
no,
he is.
he's snappy. He's funny.
Look at him now.
Tries for a lot of stuff.
Look at him with the lobster. This is really out of a movie. This is really a movie scene.
Yeah, he had in the movie, they go to the Hamptons. And the girl he's dating in the movie, which is not Diane Keaton, wants him to deal with the lobster, to make lobsters. And he's like, lobsters? Yeah. No, that was him actually picking the thing up for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
They were the other movie camera was on my left.
See, they haven't made friends yet. Yeah. I know that. Yes.
And as soon as the shot was finished, he dropped the lobster in the sink. He couldn't wait to get away from it.
So
this is him editing Annie Hall. Back in the day, they don't edit like that anymore. Everything's on a computer now.
Yeah. When you had scissors and Scotch tape on hand, right?
Yeah.
Those were the times. Those were also the times. Let me say, those were the times also for John Lennon. Also, the albums in that period were still cut and paste in a way. Right. In a very different way than they're done now. So tell me something else about New York. Tell me if you've grown up there.
Yeah.
So you have certainly seen all the phases of New York. I lived there. I went there several times, but I lived there in 1979, so I have a precise feeling of what it was that year. That year was kind of dangerous. I got mugged with a knife at my throat under my doorstep. But at the same time, it was a very bohemian. I mean, the Lower East Side was still sort of trashy, the CBGB and all that. And but there was a certain aura of, how can I say it, freedom, things happening. Bohemian is takes with itself a whole a culture, an attitude, and so that those were the times that I lived there. So dangerous, but at the same time exciting.
Yes,
not because it was dangerous. Exciting.
New York always going through Renaissance. There's always a Renaissance, whether it's architecture, music, clubs. And I was a 60s guy. I was at Woodstock for 5 days, the original Woodstock.
Oh, you were?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No camera?
No, I photographed it. I haven't put it on my website.
I didn't see pictures of Woodstock.
No, I didn't put them on yet. I'm getting there.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff. I photographed the World Trade Center after it came down. I was down there, so I have to put those on the website. So there's a lot of stuff that I've shot that I haven't gotten around to put in.
Please go to brianhamills.com, brianhamill.com, because it's a very nice site. There's a lot of pictures inside, and you'll have an idea of what Brian shoots, which is, by the way, almost always in black and white. Why did you choose black and white over color?
Well, when I first started, because it was cheaper and I didn't have much dough.
That's right.
So it was easier. And
okay.
And I like black and white to me because it's like an absence of reality.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't jump out real to you. It does just a step away from reality, and it gives it a different quality. So, by the way, when we talk about the 60s, I used to go to every club in New York and Brooklyn. Started out going to the Brooklyn clubs. I hung out with a bunch of them. Then we'd go over to Manhattan and stay out till 4:30 in the morning till the clubs closed. So I was a real out dancing and partying. I'm more subdued now because I'm older.
Well,
I gave all my bad habits.
You're not the only one. Stop on this picture, Sarah. This is a photograph that, as you might notice from my pictures, on the other side, I like more color, or for whatever reason, I started shooting color and I kept shooting color. This is a photograph taken from the balcony of Xenon, which was a club in New York. I got there a little late for the disco apocalypse. I mean, disco was actually, I was in New York in 1979. This is a shot from that year. Disco was actually really going the year before and the 2 years before. But so we were a little bit at the end of the parable of disco. Still, as you notice, they were bringing elephants in the clubs, which is something that you don't see very often, especially these days. It was very lavish, wasn't it, that period?
Yeah, that was a wild time too. Like I said, New York. That's why New York is so exciting. There's always something new going on, whether it's new buildings, new clubs, new music, new young performers. Right now, the next Mick Jagger is about 10 years old.
No, the great thing about New York, if you speak from a musical point of view, besides the fact that it's one of the capitals of the world, so every group in the world sooner or later passes by, it's also the fact that you have small clubs, very small clubs. I remember I shot some pictures in the Mud Club, which was a club, 50 people.
I was at the Mud Club.
Yeah, they were real dark, a little trashy, but it was the fact that it was all black was like an anticipation of the discotheques of the future, because in a few years all of those discos would be black. So you have very small clubs, like CBGBs or mud clubs, really for 50, maybe 100 people if you pack them in. And then you have, the Madison Square Garden, so you can go and see the super bands on a super stage and everything. So you have the whole spectrum of photography possible. Sarah, can we see the pictures again, the ones that you were showing? These are taken 1979. These are the Go-Go's. And here she goes, Belinda Carlisle.
Right.
Talking Heads shot in New Jersey, in New York. We were in New York that year. This is Lou Reed again. So
Lou
playing
Reed, after that incident, or after that initial time I photographed him, there were two clubs on East 8th Street that I would go to all the time: the Electric Circus, and underneath the Electric Circus was the Dome, D-O-M.
Of course.
And the bouncer,
Warhol's place.
Bouncer there was a fighter, a professional fighter I knew, Joe Shaw. He was the bouncer. So I get into both clubs for free. I didn't have to spend money or wait on lines. He would get me into both because he was respected. And Lou Reed's band, the Velvet Underground, they were the house band at the Dome.
Exactly.
And that's where Andy Warhol discovered them. And Andy Warhol was the one who got them famous.
Oh yeah, well,
He helped get them famous.
Yeah, this part. He also forced Nico into the band, which Lou Reed sort of liked and disliked at the same time.
Right.
But they got rid of her after one album. So you're to close this up. You're transmitting. You're on air from Laguna Beach in California, where there's an exhibition of your pictures. Am I seeing correctly behind your back?
I'm in Rhinebeck, New York, which is I'm in Rhinebeck, New York.
You're not in California.
No, I'm in New York. I'm in Rhinebeck, New York.
Didn't we speak yesterday or 2 days ago, and you were in California? No, I got it wrong.
I did it live from here.
Okay, I got it wrong.
And that was a radio program in Laguna Beach.
Okay, I got it wrong. So you're from New York right now.
I had met the owner who came to a show that I did in Laguna Beach that was arranged by a friend of mine, Julie Lawton, who's a builder and an interior decorator, who was on the show with me, and also with Gina from the Go-Go's. But I had met Gina years before at the Mayflower Hotel on 61st and Central Park West. There was the conservatory was a club inside the hotel, and the Go-Go's, when they stayed in New York, they would stay at the Mayflower, and the Mayflower was one of my hangouts in the old days, and that's where I met them, and they were all nice. So
we also have to say that in those times you could meet and attend backstages and meet artists in a little easier way than it is now with PRs and managers and all that.
Even shooting, like in the old days, you could get
Michael. Did you ever Michael live?
I never shot him live. No, I saw him live.
Oh,
yeah,
he was so nice.
In the old days, you could get right to the lip of the stage, like my pictures of the Stones.
That's right.
That was their first concert at Madison Square Garden. Nowadays, to get up front, you're 25 rows back.
I know. Don't talk about it.
I'm right at the lip of the stage, looking up at Mick Jagger.
I know. Don't tell me about it. It's the pain and
right there, at the lip of the stage.
When they ask me how close did you get to the stage, I usually say, let's just say that I put my lens on the stage to change them.
Right.
Which gives an idea of what you were, free to do in those times. So since you're in New York, tell me, how's your Christmas gonna be in New York?
Well, I was luckily invited to my ex-wife's house, her and her husband, and my daughter and my grandchildren, our grandchildren. In fact, Betsy, this is her studio. Betsy Jacaruso is a very talented artist in Rhinebeck, New York, does marvelous watercolors, oils. And when I first met her, when we were married, she did sculptures as well. So she's a well-rounded artist. It's a great thing. So I'm going to spend Christmas up there. We're going to be very safe because I just got tested. I was negative, thank God. And everybody that'll be there will be socially distancing, and we'll have a good time. And this is Betsy's studio that I'm in. This is why I did that other thing. It wasn't in California. It was Rhinebeck, New York is like an artsy town north of New York City by 2 hours. And I have a place up here. So, I get to see my grandkids frequently and my daughter. And I'm friends with my ex-wife who's sitting on my right as we speak.
Okay. So, hello.
Hi. Here she is.
Oh, here she is. Hello. Hi.
Enjoyed your book.
Thank you very much. I know, as you used to say, don't worry about reading, just look at the pictures, Okay, so thank you very much, Brian, for this connection. This is the book. It's a very interesting book. It's full of photographs of John Lennon.
Hey,
if you're a fan of
thanks for your book.
Oh yeah. Mine is old. Mine is a year old by now. Yours is.
Listen, I got to tell you something about Italy. It's close to my heart. I've been going there for 50 years, but the only thing that's improved is my English.
Okay, so we expect to see you in Italy soon as this sort of partial total lockdown.
Rome is my second favorite city. New York is my first.
Look, I love New York as well. I mean, how can you not love New York with all the changes that it's gone through? It's still a terrific city.
Well, New York forever because we're on the same vibe. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you very much, Brian. Have a happy Christmas. You, your wife, your family, your daughter, everybody. Have a better 2021 than last year.
That's what we all do.
It won't be. Yeah, it's true. We're 1 year older, but this year has been such a mess that it's not going to be hard to make it better.
To be over. And wait until we get a new president, because the one that we have, goodbye.
Yeah, we didn't get into that, but I suppose.
I don't want to get into it because then I just get angry.
Yeah. I suppose we share the same feeling. So thank you very much, Brian. Thank you very much, Sarah, for backing us up, and thank you everybody for watching. I did mention the fact that we were going to be speaking in English and not in Italian. I hope some of my friends, my Facebook friends, managed to listen or managed to understand something through the automatic translation that we had. Thank you very much, Brian. So I wait for you here. Okay.
Thank you. When I get to Rome, I'll look you up. I'll take you to dinner.
Fantastic. Okay, as Paul McCartney goes, everything fine.